Hello students, welcome to the discussions on the finite element methods. In the previous video we discussed about one-dimensional elements, 1D two-node elements, 1D two-node elements. In this video we shall let us move to the temperature loads. If at all there are the temperature variations are also there in the given problem, then this temperature will lead to a load which is notated by theta E. Now let us say if delta T is the change in temperature, which is T2 minus T1, then let alpha is a coefficient of thermal or linear expansion, then this is now what referred as a initial strain problem. Means before application of the load itself there is a strain which is called initial strain, and so that is what epsilon naught notated by epsilon naught. That depends upon the change in temperature. Hence from strength of metal we already know that epsilon naught is equal to alpha multiplied by delta T, and the stress sigma is equal to EBQ. Therefore this is how that stress strain variation, stress is actually this is the stress strain variation, but before application of the load itself this much of strain epsilon naught is already there, which is called initial strain. Now after application of the load, then only the deformation is happening like this, right? The slope of which is Young's modulus. Hence that epsilon strain at any given point of time is the net strain, epsilon minus epsilon naught due to the application of the loads, right? This is the equation 2. Then the degrees of freedoms are Q1, Q2, Q3, Q1, Q2, Q3, right? Then or Q1, Q2 as appropriate, whether this is a 2 degree of freedom system or 3 degree of freedom system, right? Then we already know what is that strain energy stored per unit volume. It is defined as a resilience, and this the resilience or strain energy stored is half sigma transpose epsilon. Epsilon is now epsilon minus epsilon naught multiplied by dV. Now here the area under the shaded curve is the strain energy stored, right? This is what area of the shaded curve is half, because it's a triangle, half base is equal to half base is epsilon minus epsilon naught multiplied by ordinate is equal to sigma. Hence the area under that shaded curve is the strain energy. That is what the strain energy of one continuum or that of one element as appropriate. Now I have shown just a demo, right? Therefore half sigma epsilon minus epsilon related with the third equation. Hence now I do have for the entire continuum taken by integration, half integration of sigma transpose epsilon minus epsilon naught dV. Now what I'll do is I'll substitute this equation 2 in the equation 1, it's equation 2 in equation 3. Then I'll get this strain energy of one element u naught is equal to half epsilon minus epsilon naught E multiplied by epsilon minus epsilon naught per unit volume, or it now works out half E n small is multiplied by epsilon minus epsilon naught whole square, right? Now then if I integrate over entire length, I'll get the strain energy of that volume, which is notated by capital U. Integration over length or that entire volume as appropriate, half integration over volume epsilon minus epsilon naught E multiplied by epsilon minus epsilon naught dV, or this is how that strain energy, right? Then however dV is equal to A multiplied by dx, and we also know the relation between local and global coordinate system. Dx is equal to LE by 2 multiplied by dx, substituting that in the above equation. Now I'll get the strain energy is equal to even changing the limits dx by substituting LE by 2 multiplied by dxi. Xi varies from -1 to +1, change of limits, half multiplied by integration over -1 to +1 epsilon minus epsilon naught transpose E multiplied by epsilon minus epsilon naught A multiplied by LE by 2 dxi, A multiplied by LE by 2 multiplied by dxi. Now what we can do is even I can substitute epsilon is equal to B multiplied by Q, Therefore now substituting which, and it will become Q transpose multiplied by B transpose multiplied by minus epsilon naught E multiplied by B multiplied by Q epsilon naught. Therefore, now you do the matrix multiplication because these are the matrices. B, B transpose, Q are the matrices. Doing the matrix multiplications, now I'll get these terms. That U consists of over all such elements half Q transpose A E L divided by 2. Actually, A multiplied by L is volume multiplied by L follows divided by 2 minus 1 2 plus 1 B transpose B dxi multiplied by Q. One term. Similarly, summation of all such elements Q transpose A E L divided by 2 integration over minus 1 2 plus 1 B transpose ds. These are representing that of the volume forces. These are representative of that of the traction forces, right? And the third one is that of the concentrated loads, if any. Concentrated loads, if any, right? That is the summation of all such elements half A E L divided by 2 epsilon naught whole square, because epsilon naught is a constant, hence these are constant forces or point loads, etc. Right? Therefore, they are now representing the now substituting them here. Now I'll get that total potential energy U plus total potential energy is strain energy plus work potential, but we are using law of minimum potential energy. As per that, dou pi by dou q is equal to 0. Hence, q transpose theta e, q transpose multiplied by theta e. We can prove by taking the work done terms that of the the second term, right? This, right? By taking this summation of all such elements means for one element q transpose A E L divided by 2 minus 1 2 plus 1 B transpose ds. If I take out that, the second term, right? Now I can say that by substituting B and this one, right? Here we see A E L by 2 epsilon naught is taken out of integration, B transpose ds minus 1 2 plus 1. But we already know for one dimensional element B is equal to 1 by LE minus 1 plus 1, whereas for 1D 3 noded element it is B is nothing but 2 divided by LE minus 1 plus 2 xi divided by 2, 1 minus 2 xi by 2 minus 2 xi minus 2 xi, right? Then for 1D 2 noded element, this element temperature load vector theta E, or temperature load vector, element temperature load vector theta E. You substitute this B where B is nothing but 1 by LE minus 1 in the integration, and you do integration, then we can check that I'll now get AE by 2 alpha multiplied by delta T, because epsilon naught is equal to alpha multiplied by delta T. Now there B transpose is nothing but minus 1 plus 1 by LE, right? But LE, there's a relation between dxi and dx, right? And so now it gives minus 1 plus 1 dxi minus 1 plus 1. Integration of this now gives a result 2. That 2 this also finally I'll get the temperature, element temperature load for 1D 2 node element, 1D 2 node element as theta E, A E alpha A E alpha delta T minus 1 1 minus 1 1 for 1D 2 node element. In a similar fashion you can do for 3 node element also. Hence, by knowing that element temperature load vector theta E, now I can calculate the global load vector is having now contributions: 1 from element body force vector Fe, and 2 the element traction force vector Te, and third one is from element temperature load vectors, if any, right? And the concentrated loads, if any. These are for each of the element, all the 3 terms. This is at the nodes, and so that is how the capital F global load vector can be evaluated. Then I can find the stress in each element given by sigma E multiplied by epsilon minus epsilon naught. Expanding that, E is equal to P multiplied by Q, and epsilon naught is equal to alpha multiplied by delta T. I have the final relationship E multiplied by BQ minus alpha multiplied by delta T, or it may be written like this also: E divided by L minus 1 plus 1 Q1 Q2 minus E alpha delta T, E alpha delta T, right? This is what called the initial stress corresponding to the initial strain. If you detect that initial stress, remaining is the net stress due to the application of the load. That is how the stresses uh, stresses can also be evaluated. If at all temperature loads are also there. Now let us. I hope you understood this concept of temperature loads for 1D 2-node elements. Let us examine an application problems. Now this problem is like this: an axial load P 300 kN is applied at 20 degrees to a rod as shown in the figure, and then the temperature is raised to 60 degrees. 60 degrees. Determine the nodal displacements and element stresses. That is how the problem is asked. Now I have here two elements. The first element is that of the aluminum with a length of 200 mm, having these properties: Young's modulus 7 10 to the power 9 Newton per meter square, or in consistent units of Newton mm units, it is 0.7 10 to the power 5 Newton per mm square. Area is given as 900 mm square, and coefficient of linear expansion alpha 1 is equal to 2.3. Sorry, this is 23 10 to the power minus 6 per degree centigrade. Similarly, the second element is that of a steel having a length of 300 mm and Young's modulus 2 10 to the power 5 Newton per mm square, area 1200 mm square, and alpha coefficient of linear expansion 11.7 10 to the power minus 6 per degree centigrade. Then first step is discretization. We are now we are discretizing. You please see that here this element 1 is having a quite different material property as aluminum, and Young's modulus and area, etc., etc. All these are quite different from that of the second element, right? Hence, that is how I will say this as, after discretization, this as my first element, and this as my second element, right? And the first element is modeled using 1D 2-node elements, and the left node is node number 1, the right node is node number 2. For the second element, the left node is number 2, right node is number 3. Now I'll write the element connectivity table also. It establishes the relation between the local and global degrees of freedom. Hence, the element 1, the local first degree of freedom Q1 is global degree of freedom capital Q1. The local degree of freedom Q2 is global degree of freedom capital Q2. That is how for element 2, this is 2 and 3 respectively. 2 and 3 respectively. Once I get this relationship, I think we have seen at least a couple of problems how to get element stiffness matrix for 1D 2-node elements, as well as how to assemble them. Right? I'm skipping off that. Uh, you can do on your own, and you can assemble the global stiffness matrix K as 3 by 3 matrix by taking 10 to the power 3 common. I'll get 315 minus 315 0 minus 315 1115, because this is having 315 plus 800, because that node 2 is a common node for node for element 192. Therefore 315 plus 800, which is equal to 1115 as per the law of superposition. Rest is minus 800 minus 800 0. That is how element stiffness matrices are written here, and they are superimposed to get the global stiffness matrix. Global stiffness matrix in terms of Newton per mm. Newton per mm. Then once I get element stiffness matrix, students, then I'll write the element temperature loads. Just now we have seen what are the element temperature loads. Theta E. Theta E was given by this, given by that formula. Hence, substituting in that, now I'll get say theta E, A E alpha multiplied by delta T minus 1 to plus 1. Therefore, for the first element, area is equal to 900 mm square, and Young's modulus is equal to 0.7 10 to the power 5 Newton per mm square, and alpha coefficient of linear expansion is 23 into the power minus 6 per degree centigrade multiplied by delta T. Delta T is T2 minus T1, T2. The temperature is raised to 60 degree starting from 20 degree. Therefore, T2 minus T1 is 60 minus 40 degree centigrade minus 1 plus 1. I think uh, multiplying this, you'll get finally, say, by taking 10 to the power 3 common, say minus 57.9 and 57.9 newtons along the first and second degrees of freedom. That much of temperature load in the first element is acting. Similarly, you can do for the second element also. Theta 2 is equal to doing that. Now you'll get finally a value by taking 10 to the power 3 common as minus 112.32 plus 112.32 acting along the second and third degrees of freedom. Then I'll now formulate what is the final temperature load for the 1D continuum, which is having two elements, right? Therefore, there is summation over all such elements. Theta is now along the first degree of freedom, it is minus 57.9, and the second degree of freedom also it is minus 59, sorry, plus 59, plus 59.7. But along the second degree of freedom from the second element, I have minus 112.32. Hence, 57.9 plus sorry 57.9 minus 112.32 is minus 54.42. Then finally along third degree of freedom 112.32. So many newtons is the element temperature load vector. Here we got element temperature load vector, students, and in the problem what is also given is that uh, now let us check any any sulfate is there on the body now. Whereas if I examine, there is no sulfate given in the problem, nor neither it is given, nor even it is asked to consider. Even if it is asked to consider, it is very, very negligible compared to that of this applied huge load. 300 kilonewton load is applied. Compared to that, the sulfate of this aluminum, hardly it may be just maybe much less than 1 Newton or so. I don't know, right? 1 Newton or 2 Newtons, right? Like that, even that of the steel rod, maybe two, maybe one Newton or sorry, 1 kilonewton or 2 kilonewtons, which may be neglected, as against this heavy load of P is equal to 300 kilonewtons. Hence, the body force vector has no contributions because of the self-weight of these two elements, and there are no traction force which are acting on the continuum in the form of UDL. So, right? That is also contribution is zero, but only the contribution is from concentrated loads. Hence, uh, recalling recalling these two forces, now I do have like this, that the one is temperature loads, that's how we have derived like this. The second load is from the concentrated loads only, right? That too along the second degree of freedom, which is 300 kilonewtons, very huge load, very huge load. The contributions from element body force vector as well as element traction force vectors are 0, 0, right? That is how. Now, superimposing these two, I'll get the result. The element the global load vector F, by taking 10 to the power 3 common newtons or so many kilonewtons, minus 57.9 kilonewton, 245.58 kilonewton, 112.32 kilonewtons. Now, capital F is evaluated. Once evaluate capital F, I think either you please go to elimination approach, which we already seen in the previous discussions, that the equilibrium equation KQ is equal to F, KQ is equal to F. Once I say equilibrium equation KQ is equal to F, then unknown displacement Q is K inverse multiplied by F, K inverse multiplied by F. But K is already evaluated, which is 3 by 3 matrix. Operated upon this 3 by 1 matrix, 3 by 1 matrix will give 3 by 1. 3 by 3 operated upon 3 by 1 will give 3 by 1. Therefore, finally I'll get Q displacement is equal to 0.220 mm, right? So once you evaluate this Q, even in the previous problem we have seen how to evaluate the element stresses or element strains and element stresses and forces. Therefore, sigma is equal to E multiplied by epsilon. E multiplied by epsilon. Epsilon is, we have seen for this problem that epsilon, this sigma is given by this relationship E multiplied by LE by E divided by LE multiplied by minus 1 plus 1 Q1 Q2. By this time I already know what is Q1, what is Q2 for the first element. I'll substitute that and I'll get what is that stress, from which I'll deduct E multiplied by alpha multiplied by delta T, initial stress. This is a constant actually, right? Therefore, doing which now I'll get the first element, a stress of 12.6 MPa plus indicates the first element is under tension, because it's obvious, because the left support of that element 1 is fixed. Even the right, at the right there is a another element like this element, that of the steel. Even at the intersection of these two elements, a force is applied. Hence, this first element is under tension. But however, the second element has left support. At the left support, a load of 300 kN is applied, but the right support is a fixed support. It cannot move. Hence, that will be under compression like this. That will be under compression, whereas the first element is under tension. Then second element is under compression like this, right? You can see under compression sigma 2. It works out doing in a single procedure. You will get a sigma 2. Sigma 2 is equal to minus 240.27 Newton per mm square MPa, right? I think once you get that, even you can evaluate using the same elimination approach the reactions at support 1 and as well as support 3, which you have already seen in the previous discussions. Now I'll conclude these discussions on one-dimensional elements. Right? If you like these discussions, you please try to click a like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll meet once again with another topic of your interest in next video. Till then, bye bye students. Right? Thank you.